My brother called me 2 days after Grandpa's funeral and said Mom has decided to transfer the house into my name. Just like that. No discussion. No warning. No explanation. Just a statement delivered like a weather report. I asked him when this decision was made. He said recently. I asked if Mom was on the phone. He said she's resting. I asked if I could speak to her. He said she doesn't want to be disturbed. Then he said the paperwork is already done, Mara. There's nothing to discuss. And he hung up. I stood in my kitchen holding my phone and I thought about something my grandfather had said to me 3 weeks before he died. He had taken my hand and looked at me very carefully and said, Mara, your brother is a good talker. Always has been. But talking and doing are two different things. And then he said, I made sure you'd be okay. Whatever happens next, I made sure. I didn't fully understand what he meant that day. I do now. My name is Mara Ellison. I am 27 years old. My brother's name is Daniel. He is 31. And for as long as I can remember, Daniel has been my mother's favorite. Not quietly. Not subtly. Loudly and completely and without apology. This is not bitterness. This is just fact. Let me show you what I mean. When I was 14 and Daniel was 18, he crashed our mother's car into a fence post coming home late from a party. My mother told my grandfather the fence post came out of nowhere. When I was 17, I missed a curfew by 20 minutes coming home from a school event and my mother didn't speak to me for 4 days. When Daniel dropped out of college after 1 semester, my mother told everyone he was taking time to find himself. When I transferred universities to find a better program, my mother told the neighbors I couldn't handle the workload. When Daniel borrowed $3,000 from my mother and never paid it back, she called it a gift. When I asked to borrow $200 for a textbook, she told me I needed to learn financial responsibility. I am not telling you this so you feel sorry for me. I am telling you this so you understand the specific architecture of my family. My mother loved me. I believe that, but she loved Daniel more. And Daniel had spent 31 years learning exactly how to use that. My grandfather saw all of it. He saw it clearly, and he never pretended otherwise. He was the person in my life who showed up without conditions. Every summer I spent weekends at his house. He taught me to fix things, to read contracts, to ask questions before signing anything. He used to say, Mara, the most important thing a person can own is information. Money can be taken, property can be sold, but what you know cannot be removed from you. I understand now that he was not speaking generally. He was speaking about my specific future. Grandpa passed in October, quietly at home the way he always said he wanted. The funeral was small. Afterward, the family gathered at my mother's house, and Daniel moved through the rooms like he was already taking inventory. I noticed him in the hallway near Grandpa's old desk twice. I noticed him on his phone in the backyard speaking low and fast. I noticed him watching my mother with the particular attentiveness of someone who needs something from another person and is calculating the right moment to ask. 2 days later, he called me. Mom has decided to transfer the house into my name. Paperwork is already done. Nothing to discuss. I spent that evening sitting very still thinking about my grandfather's words. I made sure you'd be okay. The next morning, I called a woman named Carol Bridges. Carol was my grandfather's attorney. I had found her name and number 3 weeks earlier when Grandpa had pressed a folded piece of paper into my hand during one of my last visits. He had looked at me very steadily and said, put this somewhere safe, and don't tell your mother. Her name is Carol Bridges. Call her after. I had put it in the inside pocket of my coat. I had not told my mother. Carol Bridges answered on the second ring as if she had been expecting me. Mara Ellison, she said. Your grandfather told me you'd call. How soon can you come in? Carol's office was small and organized and smelled like coffee and printer paper. She shook my hand firmly and sat me down and opened a folder with my grandfather's name on it. Your grandfather came to me 14 months ago, she said. He was in good health at the time, but he was thinking ahead. He was always thinking ahead. She laid a document on the desk. Your grandfather owned 3 things of significant value. His house on Birchwood Lane, a savings account, and an investment portfolio he had been building for 22 years. Total combined value approximately $780,000. He transferred all three into a family trust 14 months ago. She turned the document toward me. I stared at it. Your name is the sole beneficiary, Carol said. Upon your grandfather's death, everything in that trust passed to you. I felt the room shift slightly. Nothing goes to my mother? Your grandfather left your mother a separate amount. $50,000 designated specifically for living expenses. He was not unkind. But the primary estate is yours entirely. I pressed my palms flat on my knees. What about Daniel? Carol looked at me evenly. Your grandfather left Daniel nothing beyond what was already in your mother's name to distribute as she chose. He told me directly, and I am quoting him now. Daniel will be fine. Daniel always lands on his feet. Mara is the one who will need ground to stand on. I sat with that for a moment. The house Daniel said was already transferred. I said, my mother's house. Carol nodded carefully. Your mother's house is your mother's to do with as she chooses. That is separate from your grandfather's estate. If she has transferred it to Daniel, that is her legal right. I understand. But everything your grandfather owned is a completely different matter, and Daniel has no claim to any of it. I want you to understand something clearly, Mara. Whatever Daniel told you about paperwork being done and decisions being made, he was talking about your mother's assets. He had no idea your grandfather's assets even existed in a trust. Nobody did except your grandfather and me. And now you. I drove home slowly. The October fields were flat and brown on either side of the highway. I thought about Daniel on his phone in the backyard at the funeral. Calculating, counting, assuming he already knew the shape of everything. He didn't know about Carol. He didn't know about the trust. He didn't know that 14 months ago a quiet, precise man had sat in a small office and made sure his granddaughter would have ground to stand on. He assumed he had won before the game even started. He was wrong. I called my mother that evening. She answered carefully the way she did when she knew a conversation might be difficult. Mara, hi Mom. I heard about the house. A pause. Daniel thought it made sense. For stability. His stability. Another pause. He's been going through a hard time. He's always going through a hard time, Mom. I kept my voice gentle, not angry. Gentle, do you know what Grandpa left behind? What do you mean? His estate, Mom. His house on Birchwood Lane. His savings. His investments. She was quiet. I assumed it would go through probate and be divided. It won't, I said. Grandpa set up a trust 14 months ago. Everything he owned is in it. I'm the beneficiary. A very long silence. All of it? All of it. Another silence. Does Daniel know? Not yet. I heard my mother sit down. The familiar sound of her kitchen chair scraping the floor. Mara, she started. Mom, I said. I'm not calling to fight. I'm calling because I think you should know before Daniel finds out another way. She was quiet for a long time. He's going to be very upset, she said finally. I know. There was something in her voice I hadn't heard in a long time. Something that sounded less like protecting Daniel and more like seeing him clearly. She said your grandfather never trusted Daniel with money. I said I know, Mom. She said he was right not to. I didn't say anything. Sometimes silence is the most powerful response. She said, I'm sorry, Mara. For a lot of things. I think I've known for a while that I haven't been fair to you. I closed my eyes. It's okay, Mom. It's not okay, she said quietly. But I'd like to try to do better. We stayed on the phone for another hour. We didn't talk about the house or Daniel or the trust. We talked about Grandpa, stories I hadn't heard, things he had said to her when she was young. She laughed twice, real laughs. The kind I hadn't heard from her in years. Daniel found out on a Thursday. Carol sent him a formal letter explaining the trust, his grandfather's wishes, and the fact that he had no legal claim to any of it. He called me 40 minutes later. His voice was a frequency I had never heard from him before. Not the smooth, confident Daniel who always had an answer. Something stripped and raw. You knew about this, he said. I found out after the funeral. How long has this trust existed? 14 months. 14 months. He said it twice like he was trying to make it make sense. Grandpa did this on purpose. Yes, Daniel. He chose you over me. He made sure I had what I needed, yes. That's not fair. I let the silence sit for a moment. Daniel, I said, Grandpa watched this family for a long time. He made his decision based on what he saw. What did he see? I think you know the answer to that. He hung up. I set my phone down and looked out the window at the street. A neighbor was raking leaves. Ordinary Tuesday sounds. Cars, wind, the faint smell of wood smoke from somewhere down the block. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired and a little sad, and underneath it something solid, the feeling of standing on ground that actually held. Carol handled everything efficiently. The house on Birchwood Lane transferred to me within 30 days. The savings and investment portfolio were consolidated under my management with Carol as trustee advisor. Daniel did not contest the trust. Carol had told me he likely wouldn't. An irrevocable trust established by a mentally competent grantor 14 months before death with full legal documentation is essentially unassailable. Daniel was many things, but he wasn't foolish enough to spend money he didn't have on a legal battle he couldn't win. He moved in with a friend across town. My mother stayed in her house, the one she had transferred to Daniel. He let her stay, but the dynamic had shifted, and she felt it. She called me more often after that. She came for dinner twice in November. She sat at my kitchen table and drank tea, and sometimes she just talked. About Grandpa. About her own childhood. About things she wished she had done differently. I listened. I didn't push. Some repairs take longer than others. I moved into Grandpa's house on Birchwood Lane in December. The first morning I woke up there, I made coffee and sat at his kitchen table. His table. The one he had built himself 30 years ago from wood he'd sourced from a mill 2 towns over. Solid and level and not going anywhere. On the table was an envelope Carol had given me at our last meeting. She said he left this for you to find here. My name on the front in his handwriting. Inside was a single page. He told me he was proud of me. He told me he had watched me navigate an unfair situation with more grace than he had any right to expect. And then, near the bottom, he wrote something I have read many times since. He wrote, "The house knows who belongs in it, Mara." And so did I. I folded the letter carefully. I put it in the drawer of his table. I drank my coffee. Outside, the birch trees along the back fence were bare and white against a gray December sky. Beautiful in a quiet way. The way things are beautiful when they have been through something and are still standing. My grandfather could not change who my mother was. He could not make Daniel less selfish or my mother less blind. He could not rewrite 27 years of an uneven family. But he could make sure that when it was over, I had somewhere solid to stand. He built the foundation before I knew I would need it. All I had to do was show up. If someone in your life has ever chosen you quietly without making an announcement about it, I want to hear about it in the comments. Those stories matter more than people know. And if this story moved you, please subscribe because there is so much more coming. I will see you in the next one.